27th. Please rise. Dr. Bennett, will lead us.
Hand over heart. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, roll call, please. Yes.
Here.
Yes.
Let's see. Dan Nauman is here, and Sam is here. I'm looking in the audience. I don't see any other alternates. Okay.
Are the mics on?
Are the mics on?
I don't think so.
No, it doesn't sound like it. See up there? Test? Is it on? John, can you hear this?
You want to go bang on me?
Yeah, you
I
can
don't
always
think
hear
they're
me.
on. He can't hear us.
It's on now. Okay, here we go. All right. I'll rewind the tape here. Okay, we're back to where we were. Agenda review. Anything changes on the agenda?
One item to change, Chair Mulhart, on item 6, page 3 of 3, first paragraph. There are two occurrences of the amount 925 per acre foot. Each of those should be changed to 950 per acre foot.
And again, the page?
3 of 3, item 6.
3 of 3. Okay, the
Top paragraph.
925 becomes 950. That's in the top paragraph. Okay.
That's it.
All right. Okay. Public comments, opportunity for the public to address the GMA on matters not on the agenda. Yes, sir. Yeah, you need to come up, and we need to get you on tape. So, yeah, right up here in the front to the podium, please.
I'm Paul McDaniel. I'm here with Theo Provencio from Strickland Mutual Water Company.
Okay.
It's out in Oxnard near Rio Mesa High School. We have not been paying you for a long time, and there's quite a lot of penalties and interest built up. And the reason we haven't been paying is that the Mutual Water Company has a board. It's 5 members. They're not paid. They're volunteers. And we had an operator who was secretary, treasurer, and operator. He did not tell us about you guys. So we were not really aware. This year, we've taken over from him. I took over as secretary, so I got all the papers. Theo took over as our nominal operator of record for D1 distribution license operator, and another person as treasurer. So this year we're replacing our water storage tanks, getting a loan, USDA guaranteed loan through a commercial bank, and we'll be able to finance what we owe you, which is about $28,000, and pay it. But we're actually hoping that you will give us a break on penalties and interest. The amount owed is $8,000, penalties $10,800, and interest is $14,700. Our system's about 60 years old. It's unmetered, and we see that we're overpumping our allocation. So it's clear that, handwriting's on the wall. We have to meter, and I basically would like to apply those amounts that you're going to penalize us towards conservation, metering, and leak detection, and so on. Do you have any questions for us? We've just got today, actually, right at this meeting, David Pinero gave us our totals of what's due, and we don't have actually the formal letter in writing that we would, I guess, make a written response to. Is there anything else that we have to do to make this request?
Under the Brown Act and the way public agencies have to operate, you're under a public comment section. So from a board standpoint, we really can't take any action so what I would suggest that, first of all, I'm glad you're finally here, and we have been around for a while. And it is of interest to the board, this problem, we're aware of it. My recommendation is to coordinate with staff, get their formal request or whatever they have to do your formal response to them, try to work out whatever you can with them, and based on what happens there, they'll make a recommendation to either appeal it to the board or to come to the board or to make a determination. So I think what you have to do is work through the administrative process through the staff, and at the appropriate time, they will know when, and you will know when, that you'll have to ask for a formal hearing if necessary. So we'll have to consider some issues. But for today's purposes, we can't do any of that.
All right, the board is the ultimate decision-making body then on forgiving interest or penalties?
The staff has some flexibility, and you have flexibility. If they can't work out the agreement and are not satisfied with it, or you're not satisfied with the agreement that they propose, ultimately the recourse is to the board. So ultimately that is very doable, but what you got to do is work through the process, and we can't make any findings or determinations today. So
okay, I sort of anticipated that would be the case, and
okay,
so this is
all
our
right.
chance to at least meet you.
All right, and you know the staff members. I'm sure you've been in contact with them. So Jeff, you know what you have to do to formalize this. Let's work it through the system, and we'll deal with it at the appropriate time.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Anybody else? Mike, you put your hand up. Non-agenda items.
Mike Solomon, General Manager, United Water Conservation District. Just a couple of things. Jeff, you may want to contact our staff. We're working with Strickland also on the same kind of deal, so maybe we can coordinate that effort. Two things I'd like to talk about. Last night we had our first pre-scoping meeting on our habitat conservation plan for the Freeman Diversion and Santa Clara River. It was pretty well attended. We had 6 board members there. What it was just a preliminary discussion of what the issues are, what we're trying to do, and to start looking for stakeholders to help us with the habitat conservation plan. So it was very successful, very informative, and we would encourage you and the staff as we go along with the habitat conservation plan to get involved and just know what's going on, help us out. This is what will determine how much water we lose to Steelhead or not lose to Steelhead along the way. And then finally, I'd just like to introduce a new staff member. Tony Morgan is our new groundwater department manager. He's replacing Ken Turner, who retired in December. Tony joined us about a week and a half ago and is just now learning that we have a lot of work around here, so he's looking forward to participating. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have any non-agenda items for the board? Okay. Board member comments? Anybody have any? Mike, welcome. Show that Mike's here. Okay. All right. Let's deal with consent items, if we will. The only item on the consent item is approval of minutes, so let's just do it.
Move the approval.
Second.
Motion to approve and a second. Any changes to the minutes? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. So moved. There's informational items. A motion to...
Move to receive and file.
Are we going to go through them?
We can, at your pleasure.
What would you guys like to do?
I'd like to get a little bit of that.
Okay, then
Okay.
let's do that.
Plan kind of gets us back in front of us.
Okay, and it's a good update for the folks in the audience. So
Sure.
okay, let's do that. Let's just go through those.
Okay. Good afternoon, Chair Molhart, board members, Gerhard Hubner, Watershed Protection District. I'll be presenting item number 2, which is our regular work plan update. I don't have a PowerPoint. I'll be doing this verbally, and of course, if you have any questions, you can ask at any time. Under task number 1, and of course, there's a board letter that we've prepared for you, so you can follow along. Under task 1, we did have Dr. Faber at our May 11th, 2009 TAG meeting. Staff is also carefully reviewing the 104 irrigation efficiency applications provided by growers. Several of these, as we indicated, half of these are reporting efficiencies greater than 100 50%. So we are contacting them and trying to at least verify some of that reported information. Under task number 2, you will have the appeal under one of the items, so that will be heard later this afternoon. We've also provided under the retroactive irrigation efficiency item some follow-up information that the board did request from the last meeting. So that information is provided for you, including a table. Under task 3, it says we're actually going to send today 70 letter certified mail return receipt requested to the property owners requesting them to register their wells with the GMA. Meter calibration, you have item number 6 before you today for consideration. And under task number 9, Brian will give you, shortly after I stand down from the podium, an update on the Los Pozos user group and the Los Pozos Subbasin Management Plan development. And lastly, I'd like to point you to our task number 10, which is our ordinance development or revisions. We are moving forward with that. We've had 2 internal staff meetings. We have essentially monthly meetings regularly scheduled, and we expect to start bringing forth some of those ordinance revisions perhaps as soon as next month.
Okay.
I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Anybody in the audience have any questions for Gerhard? Okay, thank you. Brian.
Afternoon, Chair Mulhart, directors, and members of the audience. For the record, my name is Brian Bondi, Associate Hydrogeologist with United Water Conservation District and the Fox Canyon GMA. Item 3 is a returning informational item concerning the status of Los Pozos Basin management planning efforts. Almost forgot I had slides. As you'll recall, I provided your board with an initial status report on this item at the April board meeting. Today I'm simply providing you a follow-up report on activities conducted since that initial report, including 2 user group meetings and other tasks that are in progress. The users group met on April 22nd. That was the morning of the last board meeting. And the meeting minutes for that users group meeting are item 3A in the agenda package before you. During the meeting, the stakeholders received a technical update that I prepared regarding groundwater levels and groundwater quality. And an outcome of that presentation was a group discussion regarding the importance of the poor quality water in the shallow aquifer system in the east and south Los Pozos basins. And generally speaking, the group discussed the importance of that resource and that it's a vital component, or will be a vital component of the plan. And we agreed that we should characterize that system better. It's not well understood, the nature and extent of that system. So staff agreed to look at existing data as a first step in that process. Also during the April meeting, Mr. Henry Gromlich of Callegas spoke about milestones for the basin-specific plan, and he indicated that there's 3 main tasks that Callegas expects to complete this year. First is to develop a water budget for the lower aquifer system, prepare a conceptual plan for the beneficial use of the shallow groundwater system in the south and east basins, and identify data gaps and prepare a plan to fill those data gaps. We also had a users group meeting this morning. Just a brief update on that. Obviously, there's nothing in the agenda package regarding that, given the timing. I provided another technical update regarding the interaction between the shallow aquifer system and the deep aquifer system. That was basically a follow-up to some questions from the last meeting. The main item was Callegas presented a draft table of contents for the basin management plan and led a group discussion regarding that item. Callegas and GMA staff also briefly discussed some recent updates to the websites that are part of our stakeholder outreach program. And the June board meeting will have more details about this morning's meeting at your request. Task updates. During the April board meeting, I indicated that there were numerous tasks in progress related to the Los Pozos Basin planning effort. The first was a project management plan, basically fancy word for schedule milestones. Callegas is going to be providing that item shortly to GMA staff for their consideration, and we'll report to the board once we have that. Table of contents for the basin-specific plan, that was again discussed today at the users group meeting. The users group will be providing comments back to Callegas over the coming weeks and months, and we'll be working towards finalizing that table of contents, and we'll bring that to the board as well. Technical updates. In April, I also indicated that I'm working with Dr. Bachman to update our understanding of water levels, groundwater quality, and other technical issues that will be pertinent to the basin planning effort. Those items are ongoing. We've been providing updates to TAG and SAG. Stakeholder outreach. At the last board meeting, your board indicated a preference for additional stakeholder involvement in the planning process. And in an effort to increase stakeholder awareness, we've done a number of things. We've updated the GMA website to include a discussion of the Las Posas Basin planning effort. We also added a link to Callegas's new webpage regarding the same topic. Callegas's website will ultimately provide stakeholders access to the documents and materials that are provided in the Las Posas Users Group meetings. And the idea there is that folks who are unable to attend the meetings can keep up with what's being discussed and have another avenue for participation. I'm also working with the Farm Bureau of Ventura County to post notices on their website, again, for stakeholder outreach. And we're working towards an article for their monthly newsletter that may occur as early as their June publication. Users group attendance tracking. Again, at the April board meeting, your board requested statistics basically on attendance. Those statistics can be found in item 3B of the agenda package. In a nutshell, we calculated attendance two ways. One, basically percentage of total number of operators reporting to the meetings, and also the percentage of groundwater being represented by those attendees. And for the March and April meetings, the attendance statistics were very similar. Essentially, roughly 15% of the operators are attending the meeting, and that accounts for a little bit more than half of the groundwater that is being used in the basin. If the board finds these statistics helpful, we'll continue to provide them. Two new tasks at the bottom, basin boundaries. There's been some discussion at the users group meetings regarding the basin boundaries. GMA staff have beginning compiling geologic information. We'll be looking at those boundaries, and if changes appear warranted, the matter will be brought before TAG. Last item, water budget. Staff, again, are going to be working on a water budget, and water budget is basically a key step in determining what the safe yield of the subbasins will be.
Excuse me, how do we go about changing the basin boundaries? What legally do we have to do?
Council?
State legislation?
No, it's actually under the GMA Act. It's a matter that the board can determine.
Okay.
This is sub-basin, as I understand it, not the actual agency boundaries. So within the boundaries of the agency, the board is or has the means to determine based on the, staff presentation as to what those boundaries should
While
be.
I have you on, how about our outer boundaries, the agency itself's boundaries?
That's a little more difficult. I've read the code section that sets forth the procedure, and my current thinking on it is that is a matter for the County Board of Supervisors. That this board may request that the county adjust those boundaries, but ultimately it's the Board of Supervisors that would make that determination.
Thank you.
Okay.
So moving forward, we're going to continue working with the users group and having discussions about the basin plan, continue with the TAG and SAG updates. Dr. Bachman and I will continue to work on technical items, and we'll continue our stakeholder outreach efforts.
Okay, very good. Anybody else have any questions for Brian? Anybody in the audience? Questions? Okay. Brian asked a specific question, that is, we're getting a statistical printout of the attendance and its effect and the relative ownership of pumping in the area. I think that is helpful because I think when we finally come up with a basin-wide plan, we may need that to demonstrate that we've had these meetings, we've tracked this information, and it does reflect currently by a small percentage more than 50% of the pumpers. So from my standpoint, it's a simple calculation to make, so let's keep doing it. But you folks okay with that? Mike, you okay with that? Yeah, Dave, everybody? Okay, so let's keep doing. That was a specific question you had.
Yes.
Okay, anybody else? All right. Next item. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, sir, what you'll have to do, because it has to go on the record, you need to come up, introduce your name and your address, or your city.
Yeah, I didn't know it'd be so difficult to ask a question. My name is Darrell Smith. I'm in the Fairview district of Moore Park. And my question is, how would it benefit the GMA to change the boundaries, and what would be the purpose of doing so? And what range of changes are in line? Thank you.
I think we can go all the way to the Colorado River. No, I'm just...
Well, Rocky Mountains. is
There you
the
go.
boundary.
Well, we'll go all the way to New York. Let me take a quick cut at that. The boundaries were originally defined as the boundaries of what we knew as being the outer reaches of the aquifers. And as we gain more knowledge and more understanding of where these aquifers fall, then it may be that those boundaries have to be adjusted to reflect the fact that the aquifer is not a perfect straight line, but does have a meandering wall to it. So that could be one reason, that the outer boundaries, and it also could be a reason why when we first created the GMA, we took kind of a macro view of how to deal with water. That is, we'll all be in a common bathtub together. But the truth of the matter is we're not in a common bathtub. There are certain parts of our aquifer that have a little more water and a little bit less water. And therefore, from a management standpoint, we have to manage those basins to reflect the reality of that basin. And to do that, we may have to modify certain rules, given the fact that one basin may have a lot of water and another basin may not have a lot of water. So one size doesn't fit all. So the boundary that defines the edge of where those basins fall may also have to move based on technical analysis. So it's not something that we're going to throw a dart at if we ever get to that point. It'll have to go through a very lengthy technical analysis, a public process like we're doing now, and then we'd have to submit those findings, from what I'm hearing from council, to the Board of Supervisors. They will have to go through their review. So I think from a practical standpoint, it's possible. It probably could happen if the technical data demonstrated that it was, in fact, good water policy to do that. But it would be a lengthy process at best, and it would require a lot of public input so that the public could have a chance to review the technical nature of what we're doing. So I think that's kind of how it might happen, if it were to happen.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, Mr. Hubner, I think, could address it. We had a presentation by the LAFCO chairperson, and she indicated she had a strong say in both people could get in and get out, was what she said.
Correct. We did have Kim Ulich, the LAFCO executive officer, do a presentation at the most recent SAG meeting. And so they have their own process that we would have to consider in terms of annexation or sphere of influence, those type of determinations. And any boundary changes, mainly the external ones. The internal ones, I'm not sure that LAFCO necessarily be involved in.
But the long and short of it is, if we were to do something like that, it would be a very lengthy, difficult process with a lot of levels of review before we got there. So it's... Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. Yeah. All right. Anybody else? Okay. Henry. On this item, we're still on this item of item 3?
Yes. Henry Gromlich, Cayugas Municipal Water District. I just wanted to mention one nuance of the basin boundary issue, which is that, to my knowledge and with some research, the GMA board has not adopted sub-basin boundaries. And so as far as a administrative aspect, both of the ordinance code and as we work on the Las Posas Basin-specific plan, that may be an issue that you may wish to look at sooner rather than later.
Okay. All right. Here we go. All right. Let's go to anybody else? Okay. Let's go to item number 4. Thank you, Brian.
Gerhard Hubner, Watershed Protection District again. Good afternoon. My pleasure to be presenting item number 4. This is an informational item. I have a short presentation, certainly available afterwards to answer any questions. At your April 22nd, 2009 board meeting, the board discussed and directed staff to propose some draft guiding principles for enforcement. We therefore went and researched other agency departments' enforcement policy procedures and principles in crafting the ones that you'll see today. Timely and consistent application of the ordinance, the agency ordinance, is critical, we believe, for the success of the agency and in line with our mission statement. In consideration of adopting enforcement guiding principles, the agency would provide guidance in line with the above mission, enabling staff to expend its resources on its greatest needs, defer harmful conduct, protect the aquifers, and achieve maximum benefit for the people and the groundwater resources within its jurisdiction. We've drafted these as a starting point to address enforcement component of our 2007 groundwater management plan. A strong enforcement program, we believe, backs up the historic cooperative approach this agency has promoted, creates deterrent, assures equity across the board, and improves the public confidence of what the agency is doing in terms of protecting the groundwater resource. So I have 6 of them that I've listed, 3 on this first slide. The first one, fair, firm, and consistent regulation and enforcement. The agency would promote these requirements in law and regulations and policies regarding the enforcement of the ordinance. Includes timely enforcement of the ordinance, so the agency can determine compliance through a variety of means, including complaint and site investigations. Under the public participation component, the agency would provide meaningful public participation in enforcement matters. Under environmental justice, the agency would promote enforcement of its ordinance in a manner that ensures the fair treatment of all peoples of race, cultures, and income levels, including minority populations and low-income populations. Under data collection and availability of violation enforcement information, the agency would collect and record enforcement data and communicate this enforcement information to the public and the regulated community. Under the enforcement priority and progressive enforcement component, the agency would establish a process for ranking enforcement priorities based on the actual or potential threat to the agency's groundwater resources in terms of beneficial uses, and would establish a progressive level of enforcement as necessary to achieve compliance. And lastly, administrative civil liability penalties. The agency would establish an administrative civil liability penalty process to create a fair and consistent approach to liability assessment. So in conclusion, this item is informational today. Staff is definitely interested in hearing feedback from the board and the various stakeholders on the proposed guidelines. If the board desires, staff will return with this item at a future date for formal consideration and adoption of these guidelines.
Okay. First of all, any board member have any comments on any of these items?
A good conceptual start. The devil's going to be in the details when we actually do this, but I think that this is helpful for us to sort of reach agreement on this and have this so we can look back at this, because it's a lot easier to look back to these things when you have that person in front of you that has some specific details and all that stuff. So it's a good start.
Okay. Anybody else?
I just want to thank staff for the effort they put in it.
Okay.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Anybody in the audience have any quick comments? The question that's before us is, do we want to put it on the next month's agenda? Why don't you, if you guys don't agree with what I'm saying, speak up. So why don't we put it on next month's agenda? And if anybody has any comments, having thought about it between now and then, get it to staff. Any board members that have any comments about it between now and then, get it to staff. But let's get it into a formal action item, and we can determine if we want to change it then or pass it then, and at least it'll be in the process. You okay with that? Everybody okay with that? All right.
Very good.
Thank you. All right. Okay, item number 5.
think that's me as well. Item number 5. This item is a designation or redesignation or a new designation, if you would say, of a new board clerk. Agency staff is requesting that a new clerk of the board be assigned. Ms. Miranda Dobringa, has been assigned an increasing role in our GMA activities, and she's been fully trained. We've been doing that for a number of meetings now. So we're proposing today that the official designation of the GMA clerk be transferred from Ms. Tammy Butterworth. Tammy will still retain the deputy clerk designation, but Miranda would be the new clerk of the board.
Tammy, how are you going to live without having to come to these exciting annual monthly meetings? Huh? Long, yeah. I've tried to keep them short, and I've failed in every category. It's because Rob Saperstein gets up every time and speaks. Okay, very good. Well, let's go through the formal process here.
So moved to designate Ms. Miranda Rodriguez as the official clerk of the board and Tammy Butterworth as the deputy clerk.
Second.
Okay, any discussion on that? All right. You sure you want to do this? Have you been hoodwinked into this? You understand what you're getting into? All right. Okay. It's not under duress, right? You can always quit. I guess you can put us on notice. For the record, let's do it as a roll call since you get to do it. So.
Chair Mulhart?
Yes.
Director Craven?
Yes.
Director Bennett?
Yes.
Director Kelly?
Yes.
Director Borchert?
Yes.
All right. Congratulations. All right.
Mr. Chairman, now that your board has taken this action, in the interest of full disclosure, you should be aware of the new title that staff has bestowed on Ms. Butterworth, and that is Backup Butterworth, Bub for short.
Yeah.
I think that would be a good staff designation, but I don't think the board should touch that.
You are authorized to do whatever you want to that man. It doesn't bother me at all. All right, very good. Let's deal with item number 6, please. This is coming back before the board, okay?
Good afternoon, Chair Mulhart and directors. My name is Rick Virgutz, and I will be presenting item 6 today, the meter calibration penalty structure. And as you said, Chair Mulhart, this is a returning item that we discussed in April. Ordinance number 8.1 requires that each owner and operator of an extraction facility or a well install a flow meter on that well. And there are some exceptions. If the well is operated less than 12 hours per year, a meter is not required. If the well supplies a single-family dwelling on 1 acre or less with no income-producing operations, a meter is not required. Amended Resolution 2008-4 describes that noncompliance with the meter calibration requirements shall subject the owner to enforcement action, including financial or other penalties and/or liens not to exceed the maximums described in the agency ordinance code. Now, in March, this was our last effort to send letters out to the owners and operators of wells that we believed required flow meters. That was our third letter. We called that the notice of violation letter. And that went to 205 operators of 329 wells. In April, we reported to you that compliance with that effort was 62%. Today, compliance is about 75%. Some well owners have invested the money to comply, others have not. Today, we're proposing civil penalties for the operators who have not complied. In April, we recommended a one-time civil penalty to your board. We were asked to include in our analysis of civil penalties not only the economic benefit from the delayed costs or not purchasing a meter or installing a meter or calibrating a meter, but also to include the economic benefit from avoided fees that could be gained through ongoing noncompliance. Last time we talked about a delayed cost analysis. We evaluated the economic benefit of that as follows. The average cost to calibrate a meter can be $300 to $400. Additional costs to repair can be $100 or $200 or more, depending on the size of the meter. Cost to buy and install a new meter can be $600 to $1,200. So these are considered delayed costs, and we believe they average at least $500 per well.
I just don't understand if the cost to buy and install a new meter can be $600 to $1,200.
That would be for
How is the average $500?
it breaks down. 500 is the overall average. In some cases, the $600 to $1,200, those are paid when the person is unable to repair their well or repair their meter.
Got it.
Or
Okay.
perhaps
Got
they
it.
don't have
Okay.
a meter.
All right. But if somebody doesn't have a meter at all on one of these wells, the first time they put the meter on, it's going to be between $600 and $1,200, right?
Yes.
So
Many
are
people.
we assuming these 80 people have meters on and they're just not calibrating them?
I'm not making that assumption. Truth is, I don't know if these remaining 80 have meters or not. What we do know is, based on the information we've had submitted so far from the people that have complied.
Well, I don't want to belabor it too much, but it just seems if somebody has to install a new meter between $600 and $1,200, that the average cost is going to be more than that. But we'll go. Let's just go on and see how this all unfolds.
The avoided fee analysis is new for this time. And as I mentioned earlier, an avoided fee would be, an avoided fee is a fee that's not being paid that should be paid. In this case, it could be a fee for an operator not paying the groundwater extraction fee, either because they're not measuring the water with the meter, or perhaps the meter is malfunctioning and they're not reporting the right amount of water used. So they may be, or would be, avoiding paying the full groundwater extraction fee. So our analysis of the avoided fees depends on accurate reporting of water use. The reported water use for these remaining wells that we're talking about today isn't a real robust data set. I have here on the slide that about 30% of the wells are actually providing information on the extractions. Let me go through the slide real quick. So in April 2009, the board asked about the magnitude of the extractions from the non-compliant wells. In a perfect world, we could tell you that with great certainty. But we can't do that today because the wells that we're looking at are non-compliant wells, and they're not either measuring the water accurately or reporting the water use correctly. Of the 80 wells, about 30% are reporting to the agency. So we analyze the data that we have. We find that 60% of those reporting extract 100 acre-feet or less of groundwater per year. And the average reported extractions per well are 75 acre-feet per year. Applying the non-metered water use fee of $8 an acre-foot times $75 an acre-foot is $600 per year. So that represents an average non-metered water use fee based on the data that we have. Our desire is to compel the remaining 80 or the remaining well owners and operators to comply with the requirements by levying a civil penalty, large enough to offset the economic benefit of non-compliance, but not so large as to be out of line with the violation. So our goal is not to raise money, but to get compliance. It's a fairness issue, so we can't effectively measure the groundwater extractions if they're not being measured or reported to us. So this next slide will be the proposed civil penalty structure. By June 30th, 2009, it would be $1,100 if the well operator is not in compliance with the meter calibration requirements. $1,700 if compliance isn't achieved by August 31st, 2009. You'll see on this slide we also have included the $8 an acre foot per non-metered water use fee. I just wanted to make a clarification that That is not a civil penalty. That is something that's authorized in the ordinance, but I'm just including it here so it's clear what we'd be asking for. And then the civil penalty of $2,300 if compliance isn't achieved by October 31st, 2009. You can see the breakdowns. For the first one, $500 civil penalty for delayed costs and $600 for avoided fees. For the August 31st deadline, there'd be an additional $600 civil penalty for avoided fees. And for October 31st, there'd be an additional $600 penalty for avoided fees. Our recommendation is that the proposed resolution be adopted in order to set forth a clear civil penalty structure. We will be sending letters with certified mail, return receipt requested per earlier board direction, and that letter would describe any civil penalties your board adopts today. This concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, members. Dave.
Question, Rick. The non-metered use fee is $8. It doubles when you're not metered, is what the ordinance says. For those people who are reporting and who are paying the $4, then you'll collect an extra $4 or an $8 fee.
In this case, no, I used the non-metered water use fee just to develop the civil penalty. So for those people that are reporting, our intent was to levy that fee, the $600, whether or not they're reporting.
I guess I'm talking about the tiered. If we move on to number 2, you get what's in number 1 in addition to the non-metered fee, correct?
Right.
That non-metered fee equals another $8, or is it total $8?
Maybe I could answer that question. What Rick's saying is he came up with a methodology to describe those numbers you saw in the previous slide, but it's our intent to just use that it would be applied uniformly. It would not take into account whether or not that person was reporting or had paid a $4 use fee. It's just for meter compliance. He averaged it over a number of, that $600 number is just an average over a number of different circumstances and a number of different.
But the Director Borchard, if I understand your question, the fee, the non-metered use fee, would be in addition to the civil penalty, and it would be a total of $8 per acre foot, not an additional $8.
Okay. So that person who missed the June 30th cutoff, maybe hit the August 31st cutoff, has got item number 1 in civil penalties in addition to a non-metered use fee of whatever has been paid to date.
Okay, anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
One more quick point.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
I don't see that indicated on the resolution.
Right. The reason the non-metered water use fee is not in the resolution is because it's not a civil penalty. So we wanted just strictly to keep the civil penalties on the resolution, but I wanted to tell you that in addition to the civil penalty, we'd be charging the non-metered water use fee.
Okay, I understand.
Okay.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I'm looking at the dates of these. So we're talking about June 30th, if they haven't complied by August 31st or October 31st. I don't understand why the civil penalties would end October 31st if somebody still hasn't complied. It seems to me that stating it so that it would begin effective June 30th and then for each additional 60 days or 2 months or however you want to state it, if there were people who hadn't complied by October 31st, then it doesn't continue to go up? Is that what I...
Well...
Or is the assumption that everybody's going to comply by October 31st?
My guess is everybody won't comply by October 31st, and that at that point, we'll have to come back to you to present maybe a stricter penalty structure. Alternatively, we could carry this forward in the months following October 31st, if you'd like.
I guess I want to jump in here then, because as I read the ordinance, it says, whereas the Fox Canyon Groundwater Agency, it's the third from the bottom whereas on the
Okay.
resolution, and it says, is authorized the imposition of a civil penalty of up to $1,000 per day for statutory and ordinance violations. That's what when I was researching this, asked the question, that's what I was told, is that it doesn't have to be 1,000, but we could start a daily penalty.
Okay.
That as of October 31st, the person doesn't pay, then we start hitting them with daily fines. And we can get their attention, whatever it takes to get their attention. It may be $50 at first, and it could go up. And my guess is $1,000 a day to get most people's attention. Lynn, that wouldn't be much of an issue, but
That's what I pay for hotels, on a trip.
Ooh, I hope that's,
Staff, is that accurate?
Yes.
And
Okay.
would that be staff's intention, if we have somebody who's so recalcitrant that by the time we get to October 31st, they're not there, we begin some kind of daily penalty thing? So we need to know that's part of what we're doing with this ordinance.
Okay. Mike, any comments?
No, I support this.
Okay. Let me hear from the audience. Anybody have any comments in the audience? Okay. Yes, sir. You'll have to come up again. Apologize. If we had a roving microphone, I guess we could help you, but I can't. This is the county's system, so we have to live with the county's system.
That's quite all right. I'll adjust. My name is Daryl Smith again from Moore Park, Fairview District. And the $1,000 a day, or any of the penalties, there are, I'm sure, many people that are in the process of complying, but due to either mechanical or physical problems, either with the quality of the water or the ability to meter, if they're in the process of doing it, would they be exempt, or would there be a consideration given? And also, if not, I mean, if you get past October, your $1,000 a day, as I heard one gentleman mention, that could tend to be a little predatory to a farmer who's trying to struggle his way through growing lemons or whatever it is when in these markets. Is there any consideration given to that? If I haven't made myself clear, I'll just be
it'd have 5 months' notice if we adopted this today. 5 months and 3 days or something like that.
Rick, when were the first letters sent out?
Okay, I guess that's
Right. I want you to hear the history of why we're in this problem we are today.
well, I didn't get my first letter. You live in a rural area. Sometimes kids play baseball with the mailboxes,
Wow.
etc. Did get my second letter though.
Okay, let's find out.
Mr. Chairman, that's a good question. How long ago did you actually receive the
I got
first
the
letter?
second letter when the mailing was, I believe. I attended the meeting. I don't know when the second letter was sent out. I don't have it in my possession, but I believe it was. I got it maybe about 3 months ago. 2
Okay.
months.
It was before March, because in March.
It was around March. I believe it was around March.
But I mean, we've been sending letters for a long time, was my point exactly at the previous meeting.
Well, I have been dealing with groundwater management as long as back to Rick Farnsworth.
But I think there has been that's why I was hoping we would chase it through the post office more carefully, because some people maybe have not been getting their letters, and that's the whole purpose.
That is a valid point.
Okay, when were the first letters sent out, Rick? Thank you.
April 2007.
Okay. First of all, when you go back through the history of what we've done here at the agency, we set up a long time ago, 15 years ago, a requirement that wells had to be metered. We have people that are not in compliance with that portion, let alone calibrating. They can't calibrate the meters that don't exist. So we've been dealing with this issue for a long time, and the M&I folks, the cities, have asked the GMA to look at the ag community and to get some kind of validity of the water that's coming out of the aquifer. And we have put it off for 12 years. And we put it off for 12 years because we effectively were dealing with the macro problem of dealing with our aquifer. We've kind of sorted that problem down to the point now we're going to have to look on a basin by basin basis of where are we in our usage. And the only way the numbers are valid is if we know what we're putting in and what we're taking out. So for the longevity of this agency to do its state mandate, and the state mandate is you must manage aquifers that are in overdraft. That's the fact. We're sucking our aquifers dry, and unless we figure out where this water is going, we have a plan that makes no sense. So this business of monitoring the wells, how much goes in, how much goes out, from the rainfall and the extractions is crucial for us to make good water policy that we can all live with in the future. We put the meter ordinance in place 15 years ago. We've put a calibration ordinance in place some time ago because it's consistent with what the M&I folks have been doing for the last 15 years. And it's consistent with good water policy. The first letters went out in 2007. That's 2 years ago. This agency has been in existence for 20 years. We're not new kids on the block. We've sent multiple letters out, and we still do not have compliance. Our enabling legislation 20 years ago gave us the ability to levy $1,000 a day fines. We've never done it. I doubt if we'll ever do it. But that's the way the agency was constituted. Now we're at a crossroad. This board has asked staff to tighten up this penalty because they came to us with a penalty that was very benign, and we still don't have compliance. And so they've tightened it up. I think your analysis and your logic of why you've come up with the numbers you've come up with is great, and I have no problems with your logic. The only question mark I have is, I think, and Charlotte hit it right on the head, what happens after October? And it may be that it's important to pass this piece today to get this going and then revisit that issue as a subsequent one. And because the way the ordinance is written, these meters are going to be calibrated every 3 years. We're going to come up with a cycle here pretty soon, and I don't want to go through this drill again. So it may be that when we come back and visit the issue that Charlotte has raised, and it's a valid issue, we need to figure out how to transfer this one-time process so that when the letters go out the next time, we now know what the rules are, so we don't have to go through this drill, because this has eaten up a lot of time with this board of trying to get people in a very polite way to give us the data that we need to manage the aquifer that's to all of our benefit. There are some unique issues out there. We understand that. But if you've had a letter for 3 months, it is important that we now get that process in front of staff and let them work through the process of trying to how to make it fair and reasonable. And I think consistent with the guiding principles that staff has outlined, we've operated that way for the 20 years that I've been here, of being very fair and very, very equitable and very passive, frankly, in trying to get things done without using a heavy hand. And I think we'll be consistent in that policy going forward. But we've got to get this one done. And this ordinance, I think, does it. So we have an option, and Charlotte, I'll turn to you. We could include in this resolution a paragraph that says after, a simple whereas that says after October 31st, the daily penalty rate will be an additional $60 a day, additional $100 a day. Pick a number, I don't care. Or we can leave the ordinance the way it is and ask staff to come back and modify it depending on how it's responded to over the next 2 months, so that we can then take it on and put it in permanent place when the next round of meter testing comes in place. What's your pleasure?
Well, this is a resolution, not an ordinance, so it can become effective a lot sooner than an ordinance would. But I think since we don't have a number 4 in here telling people or asking for comments, giving anybody the ability to tell us what they think, or giving us the ability to think about it before the meeting, I think that it should go as it is now. But I would like to, we don't meet in August, I would like to have the, what's going to happen after October 31st, starting November 1st, on the July or September meeting. I think we need to have time to discuss this and think about it.
Okay, let's do that. Finally, and this is purely an administrative issue, and it's your pleasure. We have sent multiple letters out. I assume by the time you draft all the, what's the earliest date? You won't be able to get these registered letters out until first of next week?
Today, you said.
Yeah, that's doable. Looking at staff.
Okay, if you're okay with them getting a letter by the end of this month so that the penalties apply essentially 30 days later, I'm okay with that. If you think, because of the time frame, we ought to shift the date to the, not the end of the month, but the 15th to the 15th to the 15th, I'm okay with that as well. I want to make sure that we err on the side of fairness, but firmness, and I think that's where we're going. So I'm open to a discussion if you want. If anyone wants to move that date by 15, roll it 15 days. I'm seeing a no. Mike, what do you want to do?
My question would come to council. Is there a statutory from notice to penalty starting? Is there anything in the statutes?
It would be judged by a reasonableness standard.
Okay.
And my sense is that 30 days would be considered reasonable.
Okay.
But how about less than 30? I think that's what Chairman Mulhart is addressing, because
Who's going
the first of the
forward?
month is coming quickly.
Weren't you going forward?
No, I was going...
Into July?
Yes.
Not backward?
Yeah, that's correct. Forward. Did I say it the wrong direction? Yeah.
If this were a first notice, I would say that's questionable, but given that this is going to be a third or fourth notice, if it's close to 30 days, I wouldn't have much concern.
Okay, so what do you want to do? Leave it the way it is?
I think we can just leave it like it is.
Okay. Steve?
Like it is.
Sure. Okay, then that's what we'll do. All right, so...
I would ask that we, Charlotte mentioned putting this on the agenda for the future, and I think she's right. We'll leave this resolution as it is. And could staff come back to us in November saying, okay, we have our list of those people who haven't complied by October 31st. What's your board's pleasure? Make a recommendation about the next level or phase of penalties, and we'll deal with it in November.
Let's do it if you would. I'd do it in the October, since October's the end. Let's do it no later than the October meeting. A status
Well,
report.
But they have till October 31st, correct, to get that response in. So
We'll know how many missed the June and
by
the
November, we'll
August
know how many
deadline.
missed October. October cutoff.
But my sense is that you want to do something before October 31st so you can start a daily penalty November 1. If you wait till we meet in November...
Our meeting's the fourth Wednesday of every month. If they haven't set up an appointment with the folks that do this and made phone calls saying, hey, it's on its way, then... So I would suggest that no later than the October meeting is a follow-up.
September.
You know, no later than the October. If you want to do it earlier, that's fine with me. All right. You've heard the sense of the board. Before we call for a vote, any other questions from or comments from folks in the audience? All right.
I would move to adopt resolution number 2009-02 as presented in the packet.
I'd second that, and I just want to make one comment. I had the pleasure to speak today to the Farm Bureau, and Dave was there. We talked about the Fox Canyon Aquifer and it being one of the most precious assets in Ventura County, and I think everybody recognizes that. And there just is a time when everybody has to pull together for the collective good, and this is the kind of thing that has to happen. You know, just as Lynn was just saying, you have to figure out, you know, what's going in and what's coming out, and you have to be able to do that accurately, because if we don't do it properly here, and this basin starts to have problems with saltwater intrusion, etc., this thing will get adjudicated, there'll be civil cases, and we'll lose local control of this aquifer. So it's in everybody's interest to pull together and actually have a united front for those people that are not willing to cooperate for the common good. And that's what you're really going to have. There's going to be somebody that's going to come in here with all kinds of reasons why they, you know, didn't want to do this. And I think we have to have that sense of we're the protectors of the common good here. So thank you.
Okay. All right. Any other comments? Yes, sir. I gotta come up. Yes, sir.
I'm Paul McDaniel, Strickland Mutual Water. Everyone always pays their Edison bill. I don't know how many of the wells that you're speaking of that are still unmetered are driven by electric motors, and how many might be diesel pumps. But if you in the future had authority to work with Edison to shut the power off to someone who wasn't willing to cooperate, you'd have a hammer.
That's I'm not sure Edison would listen to us, but
Everybody would love that hammer.
yeah, they would. All right, very good. A motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Chair Mulhart?
Yes.
Director Craven?
Yes.
Director Bennett?
Yes.
Director Kelly?
Yes.
Director Borchert?
Yes. Okay, very good. Thanks, Rick, for a good job there. Let's. Hey, Rick, you're already there. Wow, that was amazing. Huh? How did you do that? Sleight of hand.
Good afternoon, Chair Mulhart and directors. My name is Rick Virgutz, and I will be presenting item number 7. Give me a minute here to get the slide queued up. Okay. So this is a very short presentation today. We're asking your direction on whether or not you want to hear an appeal. In October 2nd, 2008, the Fox Canyon Groundwater Management Agency notified Mr. Plater of a delinquent account for non-reported extractions of groundwater within the agency. October 31st, Mr. Plater responded to the GMA letter asking for an invoice with interest and penalties based on 400 acre-feet per year for his review. January 15th, 2009, Fox Canyon GMA notified Mr. Plater of the required payment based on 400 acre-feet per year with interest and penalties of in excess of $1.5 million. In April 2009, Mr. Plater formally appealed the executive officer's decision and paid the required filing fee of $250. So today the board must decide if it wishes to hear the appeal. And if so, it shall equitably act within 120 days after all relevant information has been provided by the appellant. At that point, the board would fix a date, time, and place of the hearing. Now, when I mention all relevant information, I think in this case, really what we require is a measurement or an estimate from Mr. Plater regarding the amount of groundwater extracted over the last 3 years. We haven't obtained that information yet. We've talked with him about it, and I think he's able to provide that. And I think given this information, we can revise the bill and recommend revise the bill and issue a new bill to Mr. Plater. So without that information, without revised information regarding the extractions, the bill would have to stay at 400 acre-feet per year. So my recommendation is that we allow Mr. Plater, considering the large amount of money, the ability to come back and provide new information regarding the extracted groundwater.
Okay. All right. So we have to make a determination whether or not to allow him to appeal process. And before we fix a date, time certain, and all that, staff has to tell us they have all the relevant information from the individual.
Correct.
And you're not prepared to tell us that today.
Correct.
Okay, so all you're going to get from us today is either a yay or nay to allow for an appeal, but we haven't set the date yet. We'll hear that at some subsequent meeting.
Right.
Okay, all right, so let's ask the question. Ladies and gentlemen, what would you, lady and
So,
gentlemen?
Chair Mulhart.
Oh, yes, sir.
Just as a technical matter, that it is not required that you wait to set the date of the hearing. The board can do that now.
Okay.
It obviously would be contingent on the appellant submitting information in support of his appeal. But I think in order to expedite the matter, it would make more sense to, since I believe the appellant is present, to if we can agree on a date for the hearing, and then also agree on when he shall submit materials in support of his appeal.
Jeff, what do you want to do?
We're stressed. I agree with that there too.
What month do you want to now?
July or September?
Yeah, because we're typically dark in August.
September is what I would prefer because July's going to be problematic for me.
Yeah, okay. So September, or we have to go after August, because historically we're dark in August. What would you like? Okay. So first of all, we have to determine, are we going to hear the appeal? So that's the first step. And the second step is, if we do hear the appeal, we'll set the hearing date at the it'll be part of the September regular board meeting. It's not a special board meeting. Is that correct?
Yes.
I'm waiting for two head nods over here. Okay. All right. So let me ask.
Would you like a motion?
Well, yeah, or a discussion. I mean, it's up to you guys. Do you want to hear an appeal?
You guys have you may have a little bit more background. I mean, I guess one part of me says I'm always willing to hear. You know, I mean, if somebody wants to appeal, I'm willing to hear what they have to say. But there are a lot of questions about this thing that I certainly have. I don't know whether I need that information before I decide whether to hear the appeal or not. But probably we should err on the side of hearing.
Yeah, my sense is that we ought to have the appeal. That's, you know, in the hierarchy of where you can take this decision. You know, this is where it ought to go. And so my sense is we ought to have an appeal. We can set the September date, and we're flexible enough that if the appellate or staff is not ready, they'll reset a date. And I think they're smart enough to know to get us information well in advance, so we're not caught flat-footed that day with information. So all those, I think, go pretty well. All right. So.
I would move to.
Well, hold on a second.
I'm
Let's
sorry.
hear from. Yes, sir.
There may be a conflict with September. I'm starting a trial in August, and it may run through September, which is the fire that burned the farm. So I may not be able to attend any appeal process.
Okay, October would be the next of it.
October would be fine.
Okay.
Could we set it for September, and then if he's in trial, you just let us know, and we just would be legally allowed.
That
to
would be
discuss
also too, as long as you're aware that.
As long as you actually are in trial.
The reason I had gone to September was because it says someplace in here we have to do it within 120 days.
Well, that can be extended by agreement, and again, since the appellant is here, that's not a problem.
I'll stipulate. That's no
Okay.
problem.
So, Mike, what we'll do is my sense is the board is going to hear the appeal. We'll have to do that formally here in a second, but my sense that's probably where we're going to go. And we'll set it up for September. And if by August or some reasonable time you can't do it, then we'll roll it to the following month. Okay? Jeff, you okay with that?
Yes.
All right. So that's where we're going to fall.
So stipulate.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. Hold on. Yes, sir. Yeah, you got to come forward. I apologize, but I got to get you on record here.
Tom Staben, 5367 Balcom Canyon Road. I don't know if this is the proper time. I was told that there was going to be some discussion regarding the efficiency reports of past years today. And I don't know if this relates to the case you're hearing presently.
This is strictly on his
This is strictly on his
penalties.
penalties. Jeff?
No, in June, we're going to be bringing you a request on what to do with the past efficiency reporting deficits.
Okay.
Whether or not, and so we were trying to bring it this month, but we didn't bring it.
Okay, so there's your answer. We're not going to deal with that issue today. Yeah, we'll deal with it at the June meeting.
Could I ask another question?
Yeah.
A couple of months ago, the board gave me I thought they were going to give me a permit to allow me
Okay.
to.
All right, hold on. This is going off this
not
subject.
about this.
Let me deal with this issue, okay? And before we adjourn, I'll have you come back up, and we'll have to. We won't be able to deal with it. In fact, and because it's not on the agenda, Tom, because it's not on the agenda, If you want to address the board on an issue like that, for us to deal with, you got to get it on the agenda, or otherwise we can't deal with it. So,
I was told it was going to be on the agenda today, that's why.
okay, well, it's not, and that is what it is. So, let me deal with this issue. If you have a specific question, get it to staff, and if it requires board input, then you got to get it on the agenda. Let's do it in the June meeting if necessary. Okay. We got to be in compliance with the Brown Act, and that's just the way it is. So, all right. So, the question.
I would move to hear the appeal of this item and to set the date for the appeal at the September board meeting.
Okay, that's the motion.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. Doc Kelly, second. Any other discussion? So we have a fixed record of what we're doing here. A roll call, please.
Chair Mulhart?
Aye.
Director Craven?
Yes.
Director Bennett?
Yes.
Director Kelly?
Yes.
Director Borchard?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chair, if Mr. Staben came in after the beginning of the meeting, I would say that at the end of the meeting, I would not object to an additional public comment period if he has something he'd like to talk to us.
I'll do that, Tom. It'll be a public comment section. We can't make decisions, but we can hear what you want and then direct staff to work with you if necessary. So you got to just sit through this extravaganza. All right, very good. Item 8.
Good afternoon, Chair Mulhart, members of the board. For the record, Gerard Kapusik, Watershed Protection District Agency staff. It's my pleasure to present the next two items, and the good news is I have no PowerPoint, so I'll revert to old school. Item number 8 is a proposal to consolidate as part of our work plan activities, streamline and update our administrative policies and business practices manual. Over the course of the year, as the agency has developed in complexity and sophistication in response to external mandates, sound business practices, we've developed bits and pieces of these documents. We're not proposing to start from scratch, but mine those documents and identify what makes the best sense and focus on clarity and accountability, transparency, and efficiency of the operation. We are proposing that a work team of Miranda Nebriga, the new clerk, who is our newest employee and has a fresh eye on this look, and Dave, who has the longevity and history of the organization, and I, from the standpoint of the management interaction and some degree of history of the organization, gradually roll this out. It's not going to be a one-lump situation, but over the course of the next fiscal year, we anticipate at the conclusion of June 30th next year to have this all wrapped up. We don't want this to conflict with other work plan priority staffs or higher staff, but I think as your board has seen over the last several meetings, it's important to have clear, defined business practices at all steps of the organization. From the staff standpoint, we operate on a chain of command of your board's policy decisions as identified by the executive officer and delegated to us. We certainly want to minimize the opportunity for confusion or obfuscation or a temptation to deal with things disparately. We want to do things efficiently, timely, and in response to your board's direction. So in a nutshell, that's what we're proposing to do. Welcome your comments, and if you agree, then we will incorporate in the work plan discussion at the next meeting what we consider to be a starting point of a reasonable level of effort to accommodate this work plan task for the next year.
Okay, what do you folks want to do? Any comments? My sense is that, again, looking at the history, this agency has evolved over time, and problems have gotten more and more complex. And part of your evolution as an agency is to tighten up your policies based on history and knowledge and all those things. I think this process does that. So I encourage this process. I think it's part of the evolutionary process of becoming a solid agency doing good work. So I encourage this, and I'm glad that you're going to do it over time, so you don't bombard us one day with everything in the blue moon. So I guess it's simply to give staff the go-ahead to keep going. Is that all you're looking for?
That's right.
Okay. I would move to direct staff to...
Hang on a second.
Oh, okay.
All right.
I have a question. What's the estimated cost of this project?
We don't have at this point.
That will be identified in the course of the work plan discussion at our next meeting. But essentially, it's the allocation of a certain amount of the staff time of the three principals, but we'll have a number for you at the next meeting.
My gut feeling is that you have a lot of bigger fish to fry, but the executive director thinks this is a process that should be embarked on, that important to have a manual in place for guiding administrative policy and procedure.
I very much think so. This is something you could hand to a new board member as they came on, essentially training them. Something you could hand to any member of the community, say, here's how we do business. And transparency and consistency are key fundamental principles of this.
Then I would suggest that if a manual like that were to be developed, it'd be a short read.
I think you're probably right.
Thank you.
Okay. You okay with all that said? You pressing on and giving him to move forward on it? Okay. Mike, you okay? Everybody okay? All right. Do we have a motion and
I
you want to go ahead
move
and make
to direct staff to streamline, update, and reorganize the agency's administrative policies and procedures and create a business practices manual to facilitate efficient administration of the agency's business.
Okay.
I'll second that. In the spirit of the words create an efficient administration of the business, I think David says something very appropriate, which is we want to do enough of this that we professionalize this agency, because where things are heading, where you're going to have more monitoring, more people that have to, everybody's got to cooperate and all of that. You need to have that transparency. You need to have it be really professional, but you need to do it as efficiently as possible. So I think it's a healthy reminder that we don't bog down and burn up, in any inordinate amount of staff time on this thing. Get it done, get it out there, but have something that professionalizes the organization.
Okay.
That's exactly right. I would reiterate that let's not get bogged down in plan making and building manuals, and let's get on with the important business of this agency.
Okay. All right. A motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. So moved. Thank you. Okay. Number 9. Hey, Gerard's still here.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, again, Gerard Kusick for the record. Again, a simple item as part of your board's effort to encourage outreach, be transparent, engage with stakeholders. We've had a number of strategies ranging from our website to the workshops to your board meetings to the strategic and technical advisory groups. A simple suggestion to complement and supplement that effort is the deployment of a one-page, double-sided factoid newsletter with our semi-annual billing statement. The postage cost is essentially zero in terms of the amount of time. We would estimate it's going to cost us about 1 to 2 hours of brainstorming, 4 to 5 hours to production and review per each of the cycles, so we would estimate that as a de minimis level of effort. We would also deploy this newsletter on the website as well. We've suggested some topical areas. We would welcome any comments. If your board feels this is useful, then we propose the action recommended, but it is entirely your decision whether to take advantage of this means of communication and stakeholder engagement.
Okay. And you were just included in the semi-annual water billing, right?
Correct, as well as put it on the website.
Yeah, cool. Anybody have any problems with us doing that? My sense is let's do that, and if it doesn't work, we'll change it or we'll come up with some other plan. But I think communication is an important element of what we have to do. So everybody
Move
okay?
to approve.
All right. But we'll just do it as a staff function to push them forward. Okay? All right. Everybody okay with that? Let's go ahead and do it.
You don't need a motion?
No, I don't think so. All right. We have executive officers report. Jeff, anything in there particular that you want to talk about other than we've heard all the items?
No, nothing that isn't obvious. There is one item of correspondence that we'd like the board might be interested in, a special problem. I think that in the audience today.
This is the letter from the Smiths, and I did read through the letter, and off the top of my head, I don't have an answer for you other than you have to work with staff. When I first started reading the letter, I went, okay. When I finally got down to the fact that we're estimating, I think, in the neighborhood of your 80 to 90 acre feet a year, that's a lot of water that needs to be accounted for. It's not, a 5 acre, 10 acre exemption well. So I don't know where you're going to have to put your filter so that either we have a meter that is pre-filtered. I don't know the answer to it, but I would encourage you to continue to work with staff. We've read your letter. I've read his correspondence. You're going to have to continue to work with staff, see if we can come up with some solution to this problem. We got to somehow account for this usage along the line. So we'll continue to work with it. Okay? All right.
One other announcement, Chairman Wilhart, if I may. Tomorrow afternoon, new user group, the Oxnard Plain user group, will meet 1 o'clock from 1 to 3:30. 1:30. Camarillo Airport.
Okay. That is a very important process, similar to what we're doing on the Los Pozos Basin specific groundwater management plan. We're doing essentially the same thing now on the Oxnard Plain in PV's primary area. Okay.
Where at the airport?
Camarillo Airport,
Conference room.
That's the county building as you made where the water tower is. It's that big county building to the left, right?
It's at 555 Airport Way.
Okay.
This first turn in, as you're coming off of Las Posas, you take the right, and you can't miss the big building on the left. I think it's the same one you're talking about.
That two-story building with a bazillion county vehicles in front of it. That's how I know it's a county building.
Yeah, it says Department of Airports, county.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Okay. All right, so we've got the executive officer report. With that, Tom.
Thank you very much for opening the public comment open again. As you all remember, I was here, I think, about 2 months ago, and I think the board, from what I remember, went ahead and was allowing me to re-drill my well on Balcom Canyon to take place of the well that's failing. I waited for a month or so, hoping that staff would send me my permit in the mail. And upon not getting it, I actually went down to the department and said, hey, I was wondering if you guys would process that permit to drill that well. And they said, well, you filed your efficiency reports late, and that you owe us $1 million, I think $1.1 million in back efficiency dollars or something on past usage. Now, in the years that we used water, we never went over the efficiency. In fact, we were actually under the efficiency quota that we could have taken for our particular piece of property. The other thing is that we do have, I mentioned this last meeting, is that we went ahead and got a new meter right away when the efficiency thing, or when the well report came out. We're not trying to be non-reactive to the thing, or to the reports that we have. We reported our water usage each year, but in all the 8 years I've owned that ranch, I don't think I ever reported an efficiency report, and I was never told that I was late or didn't do one, or I should do one, or anything else. And finally, when one of the girls in my office this year saw it on one of the applications, she called Mr. Pinero, and she explained how to fill it out, or he explained to her how to fill it out. And then he said we should fill out past years to make that come clean or whatever. So anyway, my permit is still on hold pending these efficiency reports that were filed in February, but are delinquent from some sort. And I was told, I thought today, that this was going to be one of the issues discussed to how the board was going to handle these efficiency reports that were turned in late. So I don't know if any of that makes sense or not, but
Okay. I guess I have to defer to staff on where do we stand on this. I mean, I can't.
Retroactive efficiency filings is a big issue for your board to consider. There's a host of them out there. Now, what happens is people, for some reason, they report on their use when they may not have a historical allocation. And instead of reporting, and if they were to report efficiently, there wouldn't be a problem. And however, if they don't report efficiently, they find themselves facing that surcharge penalty. And that's a huge number, and your board's going to have to consider whether or not it will allow retroactive filing of efficiency calcs for a host of people, not just Mr. Saban. And that's a fairly detailed, knowing your board, a complex issue, and we're going to provide it with that sort of level of investigation before we present it to you.
Okay. And how does that tie directly into not putting a replacement well in?
Doesn't. That was something that was wrestled with staff. I haven't had a chance to review that, but as I understand it, I've got a report here from Mr. Vergoose, which he gave me, I don't know, last week when Tom Staven called. I think it was the Thursday, Friday. I haven't had a chance to finish it, but I think, and I'll let Mr. Vergoose talk to this issue, but there was some concern, should we allow increased usage when there's a penalty out? And that was sort of an internal staff discussion, and what were the authorities, the questions I asked were what were the authorities to do that and so forth. I don't have answers to them. I don't know if Rick, if you're able to talk to that this time. But we're actively investigating it. We will include Al in the discussion.
Okay. Again, the problem we have is the board can't take action because of the way the rules of public agencies are established. So all I can say is we've heard your issue. It's a real issue. Staff knows the problems, and we have directed staff that they have to look at this efficiency issue. And they have been directed in the past not to put it on the agenda unless they're really willing to deal with it, and they want us to deal with it. It now, I'm hearing, is it's going to be the June meeting, so we're going to deal with that. All I can tell you, Tom, is that you're going to have to continue to work with staff and council to find out where that permit is and if it's legal to permit or not legal to permit. I don't know the answer to it, and I'm not in a position, I don't think the board's in a position to, we're not in a position to take action because of the way the Brown Act is amended. All I can encourage you is work with staff, continue to work with staff, and we're going to hear this other issue at the June meeting.
Well, you know, I thank the board for giving me my replacement well, but at the same time, you know, this has been going on for like 2 months, and you would think that, you know, I paid my fee and so forth, that somebody would have come and said, hey, this is going to be a problem. You know, it's kind of like the efficiency reports, is that in 8 years I've been not filling out efficiency reports. Not one person has ever come to me, no notice. I mean, I don't want to sound like I've lost because I get my mail every day. And, you know, there's never been a thing saying, hey, you forgot to fill out your efficiency report this year. You know, why don't you fill it out? And this has been going on for 8 years, and all of a sudden, boom, I get hit with 8 years of efficiency reports.
In all fairness to efficiency reports, I don't think the agency has ever told somebody to fill or not fill out efficiency report. That is up to you as a pumper to read the material and decide how you want to report. And I've been getting these filings on my ranch for umpteen years, and that form is in there, and I decide I'm not going to report that way, I'm going to report this way. And I don't think the agency, for all the wells that it reports, is in the business, and hasn't, I know, and has never been directed by the board to make calls to people and say, hey, don't you want to fill it out this way? So I understand 8 years. It's your responsibility. I can't deal with that issue today. The only thing I can deal with is to tell you on the June meeting is the issue dealing with efficiency. We'll deal with that at that time based on staff's recommendation. Continue to work with staff on this permitting process because I cannot, because of the formality of the way this agency and all agencies are constituted, the Brown Act and all that kind of stuff. It's an informational item to the board. Public comment to the board. That's all I can do for you now.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Anybody else have anything? Yes, sir.
If I may, and I will not talk about my appeal, but I do want to talk about an appeal that has pretty much set my neighborhood on fire. We are appealing the green waste facility that's located right on top of the aquifer, the Fox Canyon aquifer, and you guys are so compassionate about that. I think you guys should get a little FYI. This is the same gentleman that operated illegally for a number of years up there. He since then has tried to legalize his operation. through a CUP, which the neighbors have filed an appeal on and will be heard in front of the Planning Commission shortly, probably in the month of June. If we don't succeed there.
All right, let me stop, Mike, because I only opened up the public comment for this one item, so.
I heard your compassion. I felt you needed to know.
So my answer to you is, get the name and the pertinent information to staff so they can review it.
Very good.
Okay, so I've heard your message. They're the folks that you got to get this to, because they're the ones that's going to send the letters if it's appropriate.
Gotcha.
Okay, thanks.
Very good.
All right, anybody else have anything else? Any board member have anything else? Meeting's adjourned.